Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 18 of Unlimited Opinions. I'm Adam Bishop.
Mark Bishop.
And we are this time covering myths of love and courage in Greek mythology. We are, of course, reading Jake Jackson's Myths and Legends, a book detailing various stories from world mythology. This is actually the last section of Greek mythology. Next week we'll be going into Indian myths.
And we're again doing this Zoom-a-loom.
We are, so some of the audio things might not be perfect. You kind of dip and cut out a little bit sometimes, but we will work through it.
You are waving your hands around like Jen Psaki, the press secretary. Did you notice that?
I did not notice I was waving my hands around like Jen Psaki.
Word that she says with like her hands and she points and does stuff.
Yes, that's fantastic. Thank you for that. All right, what'd you think of this section before we start talking?
Well, they're not all about love. A couple of them only had tangential
Hmm.
relationship to a love story or lust story. Or
True.
always some reference to it, and some of them are kind of abbreviated
Mm-hmm.
story. Yeah, I liked it.
Yes, I thought it was a good chapter here that we read.
Did you think it was very interesting?
I did think it was very interesting. Speaking of which, I have designed these shirts. We had a t-shirt winner. Somebody did comment or tweet at us, giving us a disparaging remark. So congratulations to Sean for winning our t-shirt. I'll be getting in touch with him about getting his address. And I did design a shirt. I don't think you've looked at it, even though I've emailed it to you.
I have looked at it.
Okay.
Didn't respond. I took no action.
Yes. You saw it, and then you didn't do anything else.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I didn't know that we had. I mean, we have a winner.
Mm-hmm.
That ends the contest for season 2. But he didn't seem like the type of bloke to respond. I think he was legitimately insulting us.
I don't think he was.
Really, you don't?
No.
Oh, did you message him?
Not yet, but I do know that he has his own podcast.
Oh,
So.
well, he could be jealous.
I doubt he is jealous. I highly doubt he is jealous of our podcast.
Well, maybe we'll have a side bet on whether or not. I think he really hates us.
I highly doubt it, but thank you. All right. What, you look very confused. I don't know why I thanked you for that, but yeah.
I don't either.
All right.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it.
On the verge of the state of Missouri's snowpocalypse 22. Last night on the local news, the weathercaster, and their typical understated way, Glenn Zimmerman,
Mm-hmm.
Channel 2, says, "This is going to be the biggest snow event in the last 5 years, maybe ever."
Wow.
And then he turned it over to Mandy Murphy, who I like and admire, and she says, "Oh, okay then." I don't think she believed him, but I think he might have been, what do you call that? Using hyperbole.
Hmm.
I think that's a word.
Yes, hyperbole is a word. Good job.
When I first learned that word or read that word, I used to think it was hyperbole.
It is not.
It is hyperbole.
Yes.
For years I thought it was hyperbole because I just read it.
Yes, I see how that works. Thank you for explaining that.
Well, you're an expert on linguistics. I thought that would be interesting.
It was very interesting. Thank you. And so we start off, our first story here is the story of Eros and Psyche. And so Psyche was one of the 3 daughters of a king, and her beauty was so great that all were afraid to approach her, and so she was very lonely. Aphrodite, jealous of Psyche's beauty, arranged for her father to sacrifice her, lest his kingdom be destroyed by a monster. But when Aphrodite sent her son Eros to kill her, he was entranced and called upon Zephyr, the west wind, to lift her and place her in a safe valley. When Psyche awoke in the valley, she found herself in a beautiful palace, and her every need was satisfied as soon as she thought of it. In the night she was greeted by a strange but comforting presence, and she lay with this man for many nights, but he would never tell her who he was, and she never saw his face. One day her sisters made their way to the valley, for they had been searching for Psyche for many weeks, and as they saw her palace they were filled with envy, and mocked Psyche, claiming that her husband was not real, and so she agreed to find his identity. That night, when this man came to her, she lit an oil lamp and realized it was Eros, the son of Aphrodite, and upon his reveal, he rose and disappeared forever. Psyche's grief was so great that she tried to take her own life, but Eros saved her and cared for her as she searched the country for him, for he was invisible to her, only using the trees, winds, and creatures to show his love. In time, Psyche came to the home of Aphrodite, And Aphrodite was, of course, still filled with jealousy, and so the goddess gave the princess several impossible tasks. We see a lot of impossible tasks again. This is another recurring theme.
And I think they don't understand the mean.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not.
They should be called several highly unlikely to succeed tasks.
Yes, they always succeed.
Odds are against them, but somehow they get through. I don't know. I guess it doesn't become a myth if they send somebody on an impossible task and they just get murdered.
True.
Are there any of those stories?
I don't think, not that I know of.
I'm trying to think. I'll think of something later. Or somebody was sent off on a suicide mission, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Kind of like in the Lord of the Rings movie, where that steward sent his son and the cavalry on that ill-fated charge.
Yes. I thought you were going to talk about how the whole mission was basically a suicide mission as far as they knew. The Fellowship basically at some point realized they were all probably going to die on this adventure.
And only one of them did.
Only one of them did, yes. Unfortunate.
Well, and he's the only one that failed the test.
Mm-hmm. True.
Although he didn't, he failed in the sense that he really wanted it, but, he didn't kill anybody. He never got it.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe he didn't really have a chance to possess it, but not keep it.
Yeah.
Yes. So maybe he was just tempted. They were all tempted.
Yes.
In their own way. And so maybe he just got a kind of a bad rap.
Possibly. He was shot by many arrows, so that was unfortunate.
Also a very cool scene.
Yes, that was a great scene in that movie. Great ending to the Fellowship of the Ring.
That's the end of the Fellowship, I guess, because that's when he died and they split apart.
Yes. I think in the book, he doesn't die until the beginning of The Two Towers. It's been a while since I've read.
Oh my God, you have to reread it.
Yeah, I do. It's a shame. But anyway, back to the story of Eros and Psyche.
Take about a half an hour or so to read that.
Yeah, it's a small book. It's a short read.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
So, yeah, the impossible tasks that were very possible.
Mm-hmm. So the first task was to fill a basket with the golden wool of bloodthirsty sheep. And so Psyche approached the flock of sheep, and the Song of the Reeds told her not to pluck the wool from their backs directly. And so Psyche instead filled the basket with wool that got caught on the gorse bushes in their pasture. The second task was then to fetch water from the stream that flowed into the river Styx, the river that is the border to the underworld, but the stream was guarded by dragons, and she dropped her bottle in despair, but it was picked up by Zeus's royal eagle, who had heard of her plight from the winds, and he filled the bottle for her. The third task was then to go to the afterworld and beg Persephone for some of her beauty and return it to Aphrodite, and Psyche tried to take her own life again due to the impossibility of this task, but Eros saved her once more, telling her how to complete the task. She was to bring barley cakes and honey cakes for Cerberus, 2 coins for Charon, and to not help anyone along the way. So she then made her way to the afterworld, avoiding Aphrodite's many traps. She finally came to Persephone, who gave Psyche a small box, and she returned to the world of the living. Overwhelmed with curiosity, Psyche opened the box, and it seemed empty, but the sleep of death was inside, and it began to overwhelm her. But Eros came and saved her, and she was able to give the box to Aphrodite, and she thought she would finally be free. However, there was one more task. Psyche must sort an enormous pile of oats, black beans, millet, lentils, vetch, poppy seeds, wheat, and rye, and so she began sorting this massive pile in despair. An ant then saw her, and enchanted by her beauty, gathered hundreds of ants, sorting the pile in just an hour, and so Aphrodite begrudgingly let Psyche go, and she went in search of Eros. Eros had gone to Olympus to ask Zeus for advice, and he examined the goodness, dedication, and charm of Psyche, and allowed a marriage between the two, and granted Psyche immortality in return for Eros reconciling with his mother. And so it was that Psyche became a daughter of Aphrodite, living in her palace in the valley.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Of course.
There's something about the way you summarize things and the tone of your voice that it acts as a sedative to me.
Thank you.
I wonder if any of the listeners, it's very cool and calm, and I'm yawning. I'm yawning over here. I'm getting drowsy. It's the middle of the afternoon.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad I have such a dramatic and gripping storytelling.
I think maybe you have a hidden talent. I used to have a cassette tape, that's how long ago it was, of a thunderstorm. Just to fall asleep to.
Yes. Maybe you should listen to the podcast as you fall asleep.
The problem is I interrupt it.
You'd laugh at yourself like you do anyway.
I could laugh at myself laughing at
Yes.
myself.
So this story is very interesting to me. Like you were saying, just kind of in relation to linguistics, this is very interesting because eros, I believe, was the Greek word for love. And psyche, I would just have to assume, is related to, psychological things with the mind. You see eros in things like erotic, I assume romance, romantic, those sorts of things. I think it's that same root with eros. So kind of interesting how love is always invisible here. You can never directly see him. You can never know his exact face. He's always acting through other things. And then psyche, is always reassured by love. The mind depends on love to keep going. Without love, the mind will fail. I think that's really sort of the underlying message here, at least in terms of the relationship between eros and psyche.
That's a really deep stuff, man.
Thank you. Pure conjecture. I don't know 100% for sure whether or not psyche is related to psych. I assume it is. But, that's my idea. I know eros is the Greek word for love, though.
Right. No, you're right on, man. That's pretty cool stuff.
Yes. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And so the next story is then the rape of Persephone. And it is important to note that this is not the modern word rape, but more the stealing, the taking away of Persephone.
Although maybe rape.
Possibly. That is true. And so Persephone was the daughter of Zeus and Demeter, the goddess of the earth, and she spent her days making the earth fertile with her mother, and she was incredibly beautiful. Hades, the king of the underworld, saw this beauty, and so he went to Zeus to ask for Persephone's hand in marriage. And Zeus said he did not permit nor deny it, in fear of the wrath of his brother Hades and the wrath of his wife Demeter, no matter which option was chosen. This encouraged Hades, and so he came to Persephone and grabbed her, opening a chasm in the earth and taking her to the underworld. Once she realized her daughter was gone, Demeter went across the earth searching for her, and the lands became cold and barren without her care. She came to Eleusis, the land of King Callias and Queen Metanera, in the disguise of a beggar woman, and she was entrusted to be the nurse of the young Prince Demophoon. She loved the child, bathing him in nectar and holding him above a fire every day to burn away his mortality. One day Metanera saw this and panicked, causing Demeter to drop the child on the fire, and Demeter revealed her godly form, and so the people of Eleusis paid her tribute, and she blessed them, ending the famine in Eleusis. A stranger then came to Demeter's temple, saying he had seen a flaming chariot led by black horses, in which was a screaming girl who tossed him something, and this was Persephone's girdle. Demeter then realized Persephone was taken by Hades, and she confronted Zeus, who agreed that Persephone should be returned, and Hades reluctantly let her go, first giving her a pomegranate to eat on the journey as a token of his love. Persephone was charmed by this, and ate 3 seeds just before the exit to the underworld, and a darkness fell over her, for anyone who eats or drinks in the land of Hades must remain there forever. Zeus then stepped in, declaring Persephone and Demeter be reunited, but for 3 months of the year she must return to Hades, 1 month for each seed that was eaten. The sun then shone again, and the land became green and fertile, but during the 3 months of Demeter's absence, the land became dark and cold, and this was winter.
I think I have a theory.
What's your theory?
This might be possibly something to do with the change in the seasons.
Really?
Oh yeah, because I think that when she goes down to the underworld, I think that's like winter.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she comes back, it's like spring because her mom's so happy and starts making the flowers bloom and stuff. What do you think of that?
I think it explicitly states that, as a matter of fact.
Oh, I thought I came up with something really good.
Nah, you're close. You're on the right track, but it was stated blatantly.
Yeah, that's right. No, it's a beautiful story, except for the kidnapping of a beautiful woman and that kind of stuff, which seems to go on a lot. And I suppose back in the day in ancient world, it probably happened. There's in somewhat relative lawlessness, and if you're a king, you can probably do whatever you want, as Mel Brooks said. It's good to be the king. Mm-hmm. You ever see that in History of the World?
I don't think I have, no.
It's really kind of awful. Isn't it History of the World? Yeah. History of the World Part 2? No. But it's a Mel Brooks movie. It's kind of I think that's the one that has the scene where Moses comes off of the mount and he announces, "I have these 15," and then he drops one of the tablets, smash, I mean, 10 commands, really brilliant stuff. But the French Revolution one is really off color, or whatever you say, and very suggestive about the king and that kind of stuff. I think I mean, I know it's a Mel Brooks movie because he's the king and he's saying it's good to be the king.
Yes.
I don't know why I went down that path, but I suppose there's a lot of that went on back. Well, we see it not at the same level, but we see in our modern times how even in our democracies and rule of law and republics and all that kind of stuff, we still see the leaders exempt themselves from any sort of rule that's inconvenient to them, whether it's financial transactions or all these COVID restrictions, all that kind of stuff. They're always exempt from their rules, and so you can kind of imagine how bad it would have been way back 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. The beginning of these city states where the king can just take whomever or whatever they want by force.
I think that's a lot of what myth is. It's, using things that you see around you to explain bigger picture stuff. Well, it makes sense, that the spring and the green would leave because it's been stolen by somebody. That would kind of make sense.
Right. And then it'd be a justification for paying tribute to that particular goddess so that you have a good crop and that kind of stuff. And then you have some sort of rational basis for a drought or something. I mean, it's not really rational, but I mean, that this god is unhappy with you and you need to do something different or something like that.
Exactly.
Or we have to kill the infidel or whatever, and maybe that will, bring better weather.
So the next story is that of Orpheus and Eurydice. So the music of Orpheus, son of Apollo, and the muse Calliope was famous, and his lyre was known everywhere. And of course, we saw him with the Argonauts, in which we made fun of him, saying that it would probably be very annoying to hear him playing his lyre all the time. And so one day, he came across the beautiful nymph Eurydice, and they fell in love, marrying just a few days later. As they danced on the eve of their wedding, the whole world stopped to watch and celebrate, except the sinister viper, which struck at Eurydice's ankle, killing her instantly.
Bam.
Yes. Orpheus's music was so full of grief that even the rocks shed tears, and he made his way to the underworld, determined to retrieve his lost love. Coming to the Styx, he played his lyre so well that Charon let him pass at no charge, and he carried on, the souls of the dead reaching out, but his music filled their eyes with tears, and it created an effortless light in front of him, lighting his way through the dark underworld. He finally came to Hades and Persephone, who allowed him to take Eurydice so long as he did not look back at her along the way. She would follow behind him like a shadow, but if he looked at her, she would have to stay in the underworld. And as the gates of the underworld were in sight, Orpheus instinctively looked back, and Eurydice vanished once and for all. For the rest of his short life, Orpheus wandered, carrying his broken lyre, until he was attacked by Thracian women who tore him to pieces. And I'm going to read these last couple sentences because I thought it was a neat description. His lyre was taken to Lesbos, where it became a shrine, and some years later his head was washed upon the shores of the island. There it was joined with his sacred lyre, its broken strings representing forever the broken heart of Orpheus.
That's a sweet tale. Sweet, sad tale.
It's very depressing.
Orpheus is like the Kid Rock of ancient Greece.
What does that mean?
Because the Kid Rock, everything he's made is so good and sweet. And he gets safe passage across the river Styx.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Kid Rock, aren't you a big fan of Kid Rock?
I know of Kid Rock, yeah, but I don't know
he's great.
What connection he has to Orpheus.
Well, they're great musicians.
Okay, that's the connection. I thought he might have specifically compared himself to Orpheus at one time, but no, you're just making that comparison yourself.
Yeah, it's a great comparison. It's bringing it to the modern day.
Yeah, that's very, very good.
He's going on tour.
Is he?
I might get tickets.
Very nice.
I think I've never seen him live. I think the crowd would be more entertaining than the show.
I'm still waiting for Booker T. Jones to tour sometime. That's what I'm really looking forward to.
He's running out of time.
Well, he's playing on a cruise, I know. Booker T. Jones, of course, for our listeners, is the Booker T. of Booker T. and the MGs, an amazing organist, pianist back in the 60s, and he had a pretty successful solo career. He's still releasing albums. He released one just a couple years ago that I bought. But yeah, he's an excellent musician.
Yeah, I look forward to him getting back on the road.
Yeah.
We'll have to track him down. We're not going on a cruise.
I know.
But yeah, we'll track him down if we have to go out of state or something.
Definitely have to find him somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and the next story is that of Echo and Narcissus. Echo was a wood nymph who sang and danced in the forest, and her headstrong ways ensured that no other person would get the last word in conversation with her. Hera was enchanted by Echo and spent long hours daily listening to her stories, until one day when she left Echo early to return to Zeus, finding him with another woman and learning that Echo had been paid to distract Hera. Enraged, Hera warned Echo that she could only echo the last words spoken by any person, and she fled into the forest, drained by her speechlessness. A young man named Narcissus lived in this forest, and he was the son of the blue nymph Laerope and the river god Cephisus. And the seer Tiresias prophesied that he would only live to old age if he never knew himself. Narcissus's beauty became well known, and lovers came and went, but Narcissus only grew colder, as no one could match his charm. Echo had been drawn to him for many months, always wishing to make her presence known. One day her wish was granted, and Narcissus, who had lost his companions in the forest, called out, "Is anyone here?" And I'm going to read this section from the book here. "Here," cried the young nymph with delight. "Come," replied Narcissus, his face a haughty mask. "Come," repeated Echo. "Why do you avoid me?" asked Narcissus, a surprised look crossing his face. "Why do you avoid me?" said Echo. "Let us come together," he shouted with careless confidence. He looked purposefully around, his manly brow furrowed with intrigue. "Let us come together." As the words tumbled from Echo's tender lips, she leapt from her hiding place and threw herself against the comely young man. He stepped back in horror, roughly detaching himself from her grasp and snarling, "I will die before you ever lay with me." Summoning up the arrogance of his youth, he cast Echo aside and left the clearing, failing to hear her pleading, "Lay with me," as he stalked away. Echo grew cold with misery, and her body then became one with the woodland floor. Narcissus carried on, coming to a crystal clear stream to drink, and there he saw his reflection and fell in love. He was held captive by its magnificence, and he reclined by the stream, unable to move, and there he laid without food or water until he too pined away to become one with the forest. The last words to slip from his aristocratic lips were, "O youth beloved in vain, farewell," to which the spirit of the love-sickened nymph Echo replied, "Farewell." And so his body disappeared, and in its place grew a slim flower with a blood-red heart, which drooped over the water, facing its reflection, and it can still be found near streams today. The spirit of Echo is also still heard, for she still searches for her love and her voice. Another very, very sad story.
It's a beautiful story, and you can see anybody telling that to their young kid or a nephew or niece or something, and then saying, "Look there, that's the flower that dips into the lake." It's also a good story, a moral story about admiring yourself too much, especially your physical beauty, and the Narcissus, just dies staring at himself in the pond. Kind of crazy.
Well, it's also kind of interesting just the dichotomy between the two, because Echo is entirely dependent on another person, and Narcissus is only dependent upon himself. He doesn't look at anyone else. So it's kind of interesting how these two are paired. They're both essentially doomed to die, but in different ways. Echo can't do anything on her own, and Narcissus can't do anything with anybody else.
Good point.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes. And both failed because of those weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also a story of moderation.
Yeah, exactly. So the next story is that of Perseus and the Gorgon. King Onesius of Argos learned that his death would be caused by his grandson, so he locked away his only child, the beautiful Danae, in a cave. And eventually Zeus heard of her beauty, and so came to her in a blinding light, planting the seed of the gods in her womb, and so Perseus was born. Unable to kill them outright, Acrisius placed Danae and Perseus in a raft in the sea to die, but Poseidon carried them safely to Seiphos, where a kind fisherman took them in, becoming a father figure to Perseus as he grew to be a heroic man. The fisherman's brother Polydectes, longed to have Danae as his wife, but her heart belonged to Perseus, so he gave Perseus an impossible task to slay Medusa, one of the three Gorgon sisters, and anyone who laid eyes on her would be turned to stone due to her fatal face wreathed in vipers. That night Perseus summoned Athena, who came with her brother Hermes to give him what he needed for this task. Hermes' crooked sword and winged sandals, Hades' helmet that made its wearer invisible, Athena's mirrored shield, and a bag to hold the Gorgon's head. Perseus then set out to find the half-sisters of the Gorgons, who alone knew their location, and so he came to the frozen edge of the Hyperborean Sea, finding the Grey Sisters, three witches who shared only one eye and one tooth between the three of them. Perseus lunged at them, grabbing their eye, and so he bargained the location of the Gorgons from them. He then flew to the other end of the world, a burning desert where only the Gorgons lived amongst the stone figures of those who had looked upon Medusa. As they slept in the light, Perseus lunged towards them, but Medusa awoke, howling and ripping the air from his lungs, and he felt compelled to look at her. He resisted, and the courage of Zeus filled him, and he lifted his sword, cutting off Medusa's head with one stroke, putting it in his bag, and fleeing from the Gorgon sisters. They flew after him for days, and Medusa's dripping blood spawned vipers and snakes in the desert, and he finally came to the home of Atlas, begging for a place to rest. Atlas refused, and as Perseus unveiled Medusa's head, turning Atlas to stone, where he still stands today. And so Perseus flew on, although it was several months and many more challenges before he was able to present his trophy. But his travels are another story involving passion, bravery, and an ultimate battle. He would meet Polydectes once again, would defend his hostage mother, and face his long-lost grandfather. He would make his own mark at Olympus, and it became, eventually, a bright star, a divine beacon which could guide courageous wanderers as he had once been. So that last section there was just reading straight from the book. So here we see, this is just a snippet of Perseus's overall story, just specifically the Medusa episode, which is very interesting.
Did you state at the beginning of the podcast that we're following this book?
I did.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was kind of surprised that this section was so short with regard to his exploits, but good summary of what he did, and of course those stories of his travails. And I really enjoy the story of the three witches with the one eye and the one tooth, and they pass to each other. That's always an interesting, and how he fooled them or whatever, got the information he needed.
I always remember the one scene from the Percy Jackson books or movies when the Grey sisters are like taxi drivers, and they can carry people to their destination, but they're always like juggling around their eye and their tooth, and it's, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Good times.
So the next story is that of Icarus and Daedalus. So the genius inventor Daedalus lived in Athens, and he was very egotistical, killing his apprentice in fear in that he would surpass his skill, then fleeing to Crete with his son Icarus. There, King Minos tasked Daedalus to build a creation to house the Minotaur, the half-bull, half-human progeny of Queen Pasiphae. We heard about the origin of the Minotaur in last episode. Daedalus then built the labyrinth, a maze that was so complex that it drove anyone within it to insanity, and so the Minotaur was trapped, contented by the sacrifice of 7 youths and 7 maidens every year. However, Minos did not praise Daedalus as he expected, instead locking him in a tower and guarding any sea and land exit from Crete to ensure the secret of the labyrinth was never revealed. Daedalus then concocted a plan. He fashioned great wings out of wax and feathers so that he and his son Icarus could fly back to Athens, but he warned Icarus they must not fly too close to the sea spray or too near the sun, or the wings would be destroyed. They took flight, but Icarus had inherited his father's ego and flew too high, his wings melting, and he fell to his death in the sea. Daedalus' liberty was then full of grief, and he named the land nearest to Icarus' fall Icaria, which it remains to this day.
The story of Icarus, I think, is one of those timeless stories that tells a lesson to anybody who hears it, and maybe more so than the narcissistic behavior. Don't fly so close to the sun. Don't get too or go over your skis or whatever your expression is going to be about getting ahead of yourself and your abilities and putting yourself in unnecessary danger just because of your ego. It's just such a timeless lesson, that part of it, I think.
Yeah.
The rest of it is, Daedalus is just clever and a jerk.
I mean, it is interesting, though, because, like you said, whenever you hear the story, it's always Icarus is, the egotistical one. He flew too close to the sun. But I've never heard, at least, the section of where Daedalus is really egotistical. He thinks he's the best. Nobody can be better than him. He killed his own apprentice. So I think that's something that at least is somewhat missing from at least modern retellings of the story. Where did Icarus get this egotistical nature? It's probably learned from his father, and I think that's something that is worthy of note as well.
Right. Yes.
Thank you for your very great thoughts on that. Yes. I feel like we're back in like episode 20 of the first season where you went like 3 episodes straight of just saying yes to everything that I said.
That is not true. I went on different rants, but I did agree with a lot of things through the middle of the podcast.
Very true. So this next
if I can come up with another rant.
That's... You could save it. We're on the last story now. You could save your rant till afterwards if you really want to rant.
On topic or off topic?
Anything you want.
Ooh, Well, that's dangerous.
I don't know.
I'll have to think of something.
So our last story in this chapter, and the last story of Greek mythology overall, is that of Theseus and the Minotaur. So we finally figure out what happens to the rest of the Minotaur story. So Theseus's earthly father was Aegeus, king of Athens, and his mother was Aethra. But on their wedding night, she sacrificed to Poseidon, and he forced himself upon her, and so Theseus was born. When Theseus had grown up, King Minos held Athens responsible for the death of his son Androgeus, subjugating Athens quickly and then taking the 14 youth sacrifices to the Minotaur from the Athenian population. After 2 years of enduring this, Theseus had had enough and offered himself as one of the sacrifices. So Minos brought him on the boat, soon fearing Theseus's claims of divine heritage. Minos' daughter Ariadne was taken by Theseus's bearing, and so visited him furtively, proclaiming her love and giving him a ball of silver thread that he could unwind as he traveled the labyrinth. The Athenians then came to Crete, being forced into the darkness of the labyrinth, where brave Theseus had snuck in a sword. They proceeded, Theseus unraveling the thread behind him, and they came to the Minotaur, who hurled boulders at Theseus, and they engaged in a pummeling wrestling match. Finally, the Minotaur weakened, collapsing down, and Theseus grabbed its horns, drawing its head back and slicing the beast's throat, its dark blood flowing onto the floor of the labyrinth. Following the thread, the Athenians left the labyrinth, and Theseus boarded Minos' flagship with Ariadne, sailing to the welcome shores of a free Athena. Athens, excuse me, not Athena. Athens is named after Athena. Athena is the goddess. Athens is the city.
Yes.
Yeah, so I thought that was it's a pretty classic story of the silver thread going through the maze. I did think it was interesting that the battle with the Minotaur was described as a wrestling match. He just is hand-on-hand combat, really.
Well, they didn't have weapons.
Well, he had a sword.
Well, that is true. And the other guy had horns.
Yeah, but yeah, they just brawled.
I guess you think he'd be able to pick up something.
You would think.
Yeah, the body of a dude.
Yeah, that was the last story of the Greek mythology there, that of Theseus and the Minotaur. We'll be moving on to Indian mythology in the next episode.
This reminded me, when he volunteered, it reminded me of Hunger Games, which has been on my mind a lot lately.
Really?
Hunger Games, yes.
Is this where the rant is coming in?
Yes, I'm working my way into it.
Good transition.
But the Hunger Games story, I mean the movies got worse over time, but the first one was very good. But there are a lot of parallels to the Greek mythology. The sacrificing, to a king or a leader or whatever. Kids from one district, and then there's the tragic love story and all that kind of stuff. So I think that there's a lot there that, I don't know if it was directly inspired by any of these Greek stories, but I think, with the tributes. And
I think a lot of the young adult genre for a while kind of followed that same pattern. You see that with Divergent, some of the similar stuff with Harry Potter, the sorting into different houses, there's different just sort of collections of similar attribute sort of things. Same thing with, Hunger Games. Each district is a different sort of theme, I guess, different sort of, production. So it's interesting just sort of the grouping sort of nature of the young adult genre, which I guess we kind of see in the Greek myths too, the different gods and people devoted to the different gods having sort of different ideals. I don't know what I was trying to say there.
Yeah, and well, like in the Hunger Games, it's like they were put in an impossible mission, but they're not together. I mean, although they, later versions of it, they had alliances and stuff like that, but also I think there's a lot of interesting parallels between that book and movie series and our current political situation, where you have, a capital city which is so remote and unproductive and just living off the work and basically stealing and oppressing people in the outer regions, which actually are the miners and the workers and the people that produce stuff, and they're just to have the boot on their throat. Pretty soon we're going to be, whistling and putting our hands to our lips and doing a little Hunger Games salute for the revolution that is to come.
That is very uplifting. Thank you for that.
It should be uplifting. Isn't that uplifting? The story of revolt and taking power back from the corrupt oligarchs in our capital city.
I guess that is somewhat uplifting, yes.
The movie itself was brilliant in how it portrayed the wealthy in capital city with their weird styles and kind of gender fluid situation and their extreme um, wealth
Mm-hmm.
and opulence and wastefulness, where they talk about they're eating and then they throw up and they eat
Mm-hmm.
more because it's the people elsewhere are starving and don't have that. And then we're transitioning into that extreme situation now. And of course, none of those things
Mm-hmm.
end well.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of bring it back to the Greek myths, I mean, that's like exactly what you were saying earlier. I know the king in power can do whatever he wants. That's what we were saying with the rape of Persephone and that sort of thing. This is what happens, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have a control on the government and the people in government, um, and actively have a system that uh, limits their authority, everybody's screwed. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's really what it comes down to. It's human nature. If somebody has power, they want to aggregate more power, and that was the beauty of our constitutional system as it was designed. And we've kind of fallen away from following that currently
Mm-hmm.
because we have too many people that are exempt from the laws and the regulations that the rest of us have to abide by, and that's just unsustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's either going to be corrected through the legal system and people being held accountable and the rules applying to everybody, or it's not. Then all hell's going to break loose.
Yeah, true.
How do you like that?
That was a good rant. Good rant.
Yeah, I kind of worked it in. And I actually had, this was not just a made up rant. I actually had in my book Hunger Games written there.
Ah,
My thought was when I was reading it. So I wasn't just making that up because you said I should go on a rant.
well, thank you. That was very well planned, then I should say.
Well, I mean, the rant was, going on the political thing was a little bit more, but I think the Hunger Games, when you have a tribute and you have somebody that volunteers to take their place and to try well, the Greek story was more intentionally trying to stop the whole system.
Mm-hmm.
The Hunger Games story is just inadvertent.
Yeah.
She's just going to sacrifice herself for her sister,
Mm-hmm.
and as opposed to being on some noble quest to
True.
upend the system and kill the bad guys.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of parallels.
Well, King Minos really did kind of deserve to be killed. He caused just a lot of different issues throughout these stories that we saw. Just a lot of terrible things happened because of him.
Yep. Well, never underestimate the depravity of a motivated individual.
That's wise words. That'll be on the back of the next T-shirt. That uplifting statement.
Bad quote.
It's not a bad quote. You're right. You're right.
And I think people generally will underestimate the depravity of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
We've lived in a society where we've been protected from it. A lot of us have been protected. A lot of us haven't, and now it's spreading. So there was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know people would do that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you just haven't lived in the right neighborhood.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, bringing it back to the myths, it's a lot of what these are about. They're about the depravity. They're about the evilness of people. I think part of that is to call attention to this. It's like, there are ways we can stop this. Look at this great hero. This great hero stopped it. Let's be like this hero. Let's stop this terrible tyrant who's, taking our women, taking our wealth, taking our people, that sort of thing. It's a call to arms, I think, a lot of the time.
True. And it's also a call to order, that you have to follow the ways of an appropriate, strong, and just person to overcome these obstacles and to have any sort of sense of justice. So yeah,
I'm sure I said this back at the beginning of this season 2, but that's the reason why I love a lot of the myths is you can kind of tell what each culture valued by what myths they tell. What are their ideals? What are the sort of virtues do they try to embody? What do they look up to? That sort of thing.
True, and I think part of my problem with this season is the lack of depth. That I'm not really. I mean, I've read these stories before, but it's been many years. But we're not, just because of the nature of it. We're reading a summary of the myths, and it's hard to really get into the details of what the myths were. And I feel like, and I don't know this, but I feel like we kind of gave the African myths and stories a short shrift.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be more than what we went through, or this book did, which is Myths and Legends. Anyway, so I think that's I wish we could do more, but there's only so much time.
Yeah.
You know, if we're gonna do a survey of myths around the world, you know, and we're gonna have these little podcasts once a week, it's just impossible to go into the real value of them. Like you said, it's, you know, it really does talk about the cultural norms and the cultural values of that society. And there's a lot of parallels, but there's differences too. You know.
Well, that's, you know, if our listeners ever want us to go more in depth with one particular thing, they can, of course, tell us that on Twitter. They can follow us on Twitter and tweet at us at ULMTD Opinions. It's ULMTD Opinions. So if there is like a resource that you have found, you know, that details more of a particular African myth, or, you know, what's the meaning behind this Greek myth, tweet at us. And at least I'll read it. I can't say for certain if you will, but it will be there. I will provide it to you, any resources that our listeners tweet at us.
I will read the tweet.
What's the character limit? What's like 120 characters or something?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't tweet.
I do every week. I should know this. It's not many. Not many.
40, isn't it?
140. That sounds better.
It should be 144, which is gross. I don't know why it should be, but that's what I think.
Gross is a good number.
It's gross, man. I only remember gross because bottle rockets are sold on the gross, or they were when I was a kid. So you get a pack of 12 12s is a gross. I like 2 gross of bottle rockets. It's a lot of bottle rockets.
Yeah, that's true.
Takes you a long time to shoot off 2 gross. Your neighbors hate you. When you're a kid, you don't care. You have 288 those red sticks with blown up bottle rocket remains all over the neighborhood.
That's lovely. That's fantastic.
I don't know why I said that. I don't know. It's interesting to me.
Yes, this is well. Thank you for that. Do you have any other remarks on bottle rockets or Greek myths?
There's a local band called the Bottle Rockets out of St. Louis.
Oh,
They had an album, but I think they're retired now.
Unfortunate.
One of the members was from Festus,
What do you know?
the Bottle Rockets.
Yes. Well, thank you for that. This has been episode 18 of season 2 of Unlimited Opinions. I've been Adam Bishop.
Still Mark Bishop.
You said that very angrily.
Yeah, just forcefully.
Just forcefully, yes. Just forcefully. Not as soothing as I tell the stories, apparently.
Man, I'm telling you, it put me to sleep.
I saw you lean back in your chair earlier. I'm like, oh no, he's actually going to fall asleep.
It crossed my mind. It's very soothing. I need to like cut me out of these podcasts and just have like an hour-long tape and fall asleep to it.
Oh my God. That's ridiculous.
You know, I feel it was a missed opportunity not mentioning our echo problems when we were talking about the echo.
Well, you can mention it now. I'm still recording.
Oh, what a day!
Yes.
We had all sorts of technical problems because I was hearing myself with a really slow delay echo.
And then we realized all we had to do was open up the Zoom audio settings menu and click the echo cancellation thing on his end, and then it solved the entire problem. But we spent like a half hour last night trying to figure it out before just giving up and recording today.
It was more than a half hour.
Yeah, it was a long time.
At first it was maddening, and then it became like I missed it when it was gone.
That's a little freaky.
I wonder if maybe it'd be something that I should figure out a way to do that for an entire day. Put on headphones and listen to my own voice as an echo for a whole day.
That's kind of crazy. I don't know why you would ever want that. Interesting. All right. Well, once you figure that out, we could do that next episode.
You kind of miss it. I had it in my head for a half hour last night. I kind of missed that voice.
That's really worrying.
It's like what's that one Spider-Man episode with the Green Goblin? He had a voice in his head. Or Venom. Venom has like a alien voice in his head, and then they separate, don't they? And then he like missed his venom.
Yeah.
That was the most recent movie.
That's true.
So I was kind of like my Venom. I lost my
Yes,
Venom.
you are your own Venom. That's fantastic.